Hello, brothers and sisters, fellow Equatorians. This is Sabata with the Equatoria Advocacy Foundation. I'm the director for resource mobilization. Today is August 11th. We are just 1 week away from celebrating the Torit mutiny. And for that reason, I would like to analyze to you few things here and there. And this is because we, the Equatorians, starting from that time until today, we are still fighting the same war. When I'm saying we are still fighting the same war, it's because we are still seeking freedom. In the first civil war, the freedom fighters at that time seeked for freedom. And they got what is called regional autonomy. It was a deal. And even during that time, they still seeked for freedom along provincial lines. And following that, in 1983, there was still seek of freedom in the second civil war that was fought by the SPLM. And right now, we are already a country, and if you have realized, the Equatorians are calling for decentralization of powers. Others are calling to the degree of confederacy. Others are calling for federation. Others are even talking about separation. So it is still seeking for freedom. So it looks like it's the same tone, it's the same war that Equatorians continuously keep seeking, keep fighting for. So for this reason, I would like to analyze the situation of Equatorians seeking freedom here and there by pretty much concentrating on the form of freedom that was demanded during the time of the government of the Addis Ababa Agreement. There is not much that would be analyzed on the Anyanya War itself. All right, yes, the Anyanya War was fought, and the freedom fighters at the time called for separation of the South. And when they called for separation of the South, and the war was fought for 17 years, but eventually they went, of course, through an agreement in Addis Ababa, and it came out to be the provisions that are settled or signed in the Addis Ababa Agreement, and it provided a quasi-autonomous government for the people of the South, and it was called the regional autonomy. Now, even during that time, there was a call for further decentralization of administrative powers to what is called the provinces of Equatoria and the province of Upper Nile and the province of Bahr al-Ghazal. And it was during that time that I am going to be analyzing many things here and there, because so much during that time that has happened seems to be repeating themselves today. And I would like to analyze them so that the viewers or the decoders of this message would be able to contrast and understand exactly through my analysis how the decentralization, the further request for decentralization of powers that was sought at that time was basically demanding further freedom, and contrasted with the demand for decentralization today, which is called in form of either confederation or federation, or even further more than that. Now, for that reason, I am going to basically read from a piece that was written by General Joseph Lagu back around the end of, or rather the beginning of 1983, and it is decentralization. The document is Decentralization, a necessity for the southern provinces of the Sudan, by Lieutenant General Joseph Lagu. Now, I am going to start. He started writing by saying, when the selfish man has eaten, he calls the hungry man greedy. He said, this old adage is a proverb, it is a saying. He said, this old adage is symbolic of the situation now prevailing in the South Sudan. Political leadership with a strong tribal orientation having satisfied themselves that the only way to remain in power is to fan up tribal loyalties from their tribe, which they believe must dominate because of sheer numbers are now turning around to point a finger at those who want to correct the situation as power-hungry politicians. I'm sure if you hear something like that, you would remember that when the IO, when Dr. Riek Machar started fighting before the current holdouts revolted, he was basically labeled as a power-hungry person, and it is basically a repeat of what Lagu has written in 1983. So it looks like it's a tone that has been that he is aware of. You know, you can imagine he wrote this in 1983, and we hear this right now when there are some politicians who are calling for reforms and to correct certain measures. They are simply called power hungry and are not patient, or are not waiting to come into power democratically. Of course, those are talks that has been thrown out there. Indeed, they are so infatuated with the desire to make their tribesmen politically predominant that emergence of any group to suggest corrective measures never appeared to them to be possible. It would also seem that they never gave any thought to the idea that they might be forcing a cat into a corner from where it would have no choice but to scratch and bite in self-defense. This is probably why there are some people called holdouts. You know, if you go out there and start talking to the holdouts might tell you that, look, we are cornered, we have no option but to fight in self-defense, because of the fact that there are a good number of people in South Sudan right now who are calling for some corrective measures, and it looks like those voices calling for corrective measures are getting ignored, and political situation in South Sudan is getting worse. Now, we in South Sudan, we have always talked about our problems, where our problems are coming from, and how do we solve them. But I think I am beginning to think that we, the South Sudanese, are just not listening to ourselves closely. We are not paying attention, at least, to ourselves, because it looks like our problems seem to be recurrent, all right, and the obvious political solutions are deliberately getting rejected, all right, and sometimes we factually make up certain concepts and beliefs that don't seem to help us basically coordinate our problems in a way that will make us politically solve our problems. Why? Let me begin by kind of noting this. You know, Lagu wrote some very interesting stuffs here. I want to start by reading what he wrote as proposals for the regionalization of the southern province. All right. When you look at what Lagu wrote there, if you try to read, he says the following. Let me read it. He says the following points noteworthy before giving these proposals a serious thought. We went to Addis Ababa as Southern Sudanese who had fought a bloody 17 years war as members of 3 provinces which were governed directly from Khartoum. Now, if you notice, Lagu said after fighting for 17 years, they went to Addis Ababa not as a constituent of just South Sudanese, but he was able to identify, he was able to note that a combination of 3 provinces. And what are those 3 provinces? Those are the people of Equatoria, the people who come from what is called the Upper Nile province, and the people who come from what is called the Bahr al-Ghazal province. Now, those provinces are socio-political demographics that we had once been formed under. And out of those provinces, people like what is called a constituent or social constituent of the Equatoria today do exist. These are social facts. And when we are going to be discussing issues, pertinent issues of politics, those constituents cannot be ignored, or their interests cannot be ignored, because as a matter of fact, when you have constituents, usually a constituent is expected to be people who share so much in common, be it culture, be it language, these kind of things. And why did Lagu emphasize on these 3 demographics? Because he understands from a general rule of thumb, or from the studies of political science, when you put people of very distinct culture, you put them together, and you're trying to kind of centralize them or govern them as one, what you will be faced with is something called conflict of culture. And when this conflict of culture happens, you are most likely going to experience what is called fights amongst the people. And let me prove this to you, so that this discussion will not go with certain claims that are unjustified. I want you to listen to this for a minute. I hope it won't be making a lot of advertisement, but just to get into the discussion. This is out of YouTube, you know.
Cultural conflict is a type of conflict that occurs when different cultural values and beliefs clash. It has been used to explain violence and crime. Jonathan H. Turner defines it as a conflict caused by differences in cultural values and beliefs that place people at odds with one another.
Correct.
On a micro level, Alexander Grew discusses a cultural conflict between guests of different culture and nationality as seen in a British 1970s sitcom.
I don't know
Faulty
if I will
towers.
have to
He
allow
defines
you
this
to continue
conflict as
listening
one
to
that
this.
occurs when
These are
people's
things that are getting
expectations of a certain
studied.
behavior coming from their cultural backgrounds are not met, as others have different cultural backgrounds and different expectations. Cultural conflicts are difficult to resolve as parties to the conflict have different beliefs.
Yes.
Cultural conflicts intensify when those differences become reflected in politics, particularly on a macro level. An example of cultural conflict is the debate over abortion.
Okay, I will not get into that because she's trying to put it in the context of what they are seeing here. That's why she was trying to talk of the abortion problems here. But in general, these things are studied because they are proven through some researchers as true. All right, and we, the people of South Sudan, are so diversified that if power is always centralized, and imagine our central government is very irresponsible, not able to put what is called regulations and put what is called mechanism to adjudicate justice equally with the people, and they have always proved absent completely in lives of people, and imagine a situation like that now without having what is called a decentralized system, so that these people will start organizing themselves locally at what is called their local levels. There will always be what is called conflict of culture, and it will be reflected in what is called problems that we are seeing. And as a matter of fact, we have always come around talking to ourselves, but we have always had problems. We have always had problems in South Sudan. The problems that we have in South Sudan is because it looks like we don't give education regards. We don't give education regards, or at least the material that gets to be taught through education, we ignore them. When Lagu has suggested that let these people who come from these provinces be given the chance to administer themselves, that could solve a lot of problems. I would like to give you an example of where we are at today, leave alone that time. Where we are at today, you might be realizing that there are so many problems going on right now with the tribes that come from what is called the Upper Nile, and there are also a couple of problems going on with tribes in the Bahr al-Ghazal. Now, suppose in the Upper Nile territory, you have what is called a provincial government in that area, and the leaders of those people, like the Shuluk, the Dinkabor, the Murle, the Nuer, all right, have what is called a council or a provincial parliament around that area, and they come together to deliberate on matters of their life in that territory. Now, the youth, the fighting groups, the youth, most of those youth who are now picking up fights most of the time, see that their leaders always sit together in one council or in one provincial parliament or assembly to figure out life in Upper Nile, and also to suggest certain regulations as to how they should administer themselves. And they would also be having a local governor, okay, of those states that fall in that territory. Won't there be a possibility that these youth themselves will come to understand that we are one in this territory and we shouldn't be fighting each other the way we are fighting each other? That if the people of Murle see the 2-3 educated Murle people are sitting in the same council with people from Nuer, and with people from Dinkabor. They see all their leaders sitting together. Is there no any possibility that this youth will come to a senses and to understand that no, it looks like we are one, we shouldn't be doing this? At least they would. It's only that the fact that we are not giving chance for decentralization to surface the way decentralization of powers are defined. This is it, and this is one of the fundamental problems that we are having in South Sudan, because here Lagu had written some very interesting stuff which had been happening at that time and are happening today. Because during those days, based on what Lagu has written here, during those days, the structural government of the regional autonomy is designed such that besides the High Executive Council and besides the assembly, there are what is called provincial commissioners. All right, but what Lagu had said here, let me explain it really quick before I read it. He was saying that security of the provinces were under the commissioners. But what was happening was that there was lack of respect from the higher authority. Incidences, problems that are taking place within those provinces, instead of having the commissioner dispatch its local authority to take care of those or solve those problems within those provinces. And of course, by concept of the West, it is called jurisdiction. Those are matters of those jurisdiction. You don't take them anywhere. You allow the laws of those provinces to surface, to manifest, to operate, okay, within those jurisdiction. Instead, Lagu is saying, instead of those things are allowed the laws to allowed to take care of those discrepancies that are arising within those provinces, the Inspector General would take those matters out of those provinces and forward them to the regional police headquarters, which of course, based on his descriptions here, are all people of the same tribe. And the cases are not getting handled in a manner that would make the local people who feel they are being marginalized would feel as though they are being treated with value or laws are being upheld. All right, let me do some readings here so that you understand what he's talking about. Well, I don't know whether I should read these. Basically, is emphasizing on the idea of decentralization. He's saying Article 6 and 7 of the Permanent Constitution of the Sudan. Remember, the regional autonomy is a deal between the Sudan and the South Sudan. Advocate the administration of the country on the basis of a completely decentralized system in accordance with the Sudanese policy of ensuring the full participation of the people in the process of policy making and government of their country. Now, paragraph 4 of the preamble to the South Provinces Regional Self-Government Act of 1972, of course that was just amended in 1972, also states that the act of the 1972 is made in accordance with the principles of May Revolution, Teletin Yunu, Debitat Sorat Mayo, that the Sudanese people shall participate actively in the supervised and decentralized system of the government of their country. Well, this is just basically talking about the decentralization. I wanted to read where he specifically has been talking about. I don't want to mention name of a tribe here. I wanted to come out of this reading because he was basically what he wrote here. He was basically talking about the fact that cattle. He talked about cattle keepers from the Dinka tribe would roam around all the provinces, uncontrolled, and give no regards for the local authorities to manage or pass laws that would basically control their movements, because even if they violate those laws, the issues are all the time being taken to the central police headquarters, who is managed by a Dinka, and the cases are not handled with justice. I'm going to read something here really very quick. The basic problem that bedevils any heterogeneous society like ours is how to attain unity. On initiating the ideals that are incorporated in Articles 6 and 7 of the Permanent Constitution of the Sudan, we need to accommodate the aspirations of the various communities in the country, must have taken precedence over all other considerations. There is no doubt that with a heterogeneous society like ours, linked by little more than the Berlin political geography and our own nature, sorry about that. The most considered opinion in this pamphlet is that the loose attitude adopted by authorities in the southern Sudan, who consists largely of one tribe, is one that will lead to the negation, that is negation of the policy of decentralization in our Sudanese political rule. What sense? And have it replaced by a system of indirect rule. What is even more apparent is that the policy of decentralization has become merely a subject of political manipulation. There is a Dinka advisor on local government to try to tally Article 184 of the Permanent Constitution with Article 18 of the Southern Provinces Regional Self-Government Act of 1972. Well, I will be coming out live actually on the 18th, and on the 18th I will actually be having all these things printed, and I will be highlighting them, because right now I'm reading them off a cell phone, and sometimes I go back and forth, and it makes it really very hard for me to follow up. But generally, fellow brothers and sisters, fellow Equatorians, as I've said, I will be coming out and talk more about this, analyze this on the 18th. That is on the commemoration day of the Torit Mutiny. If not on the 18th exactly, it's going to be on that weekend. And the message that I will be delivering out there is how the Equatorians has constantly seeked for that freedom, all right, even until today. as we go through this political dispensation that we have right now, we realize that a lot of the things that Lago had said here, which of course I was not able to pull out, about cattle being brought and roaming around, and local authorities are not able to put any laws because it will not matter. Even if you put any law, it will be ignored because of the central authority, and how the police functions, and that leaves again those who feel they are marginalized talk and call for more and more decentralization of powers, this time in form of now federation or confederation. So basically there is this constant demand for freedom, that is seeking an ability to decide on what is called a political destiny, because with a decentralized system of governance, whether it is confederation or federation, as I've given a lot in videos, it's all about you and your constituent and your leaders within your states. You formulate your own laws, you have your own personnel who are going to be security, who are going to help in enforcing those laws, and you're also going to have your own courts that are going to interpret those laws, and eventually whoever then will come and live in those states will live under those policies, all right? And eventually all the policies that will be designed that will protect land grabbing will be able to be enforced. Policies that will be protecting general security, that is designing the systems by which perpetrators who are committing crimes are usually traced and apprehended in order to be dealt with. System of education, system of healthcare, all this eventually will be able to be created within the states, and that will make governance or life within states comfortable, without any arbitrary, that is random rule from above, where sometimes crimes happen within states, and you end up finding out that the crimes are sometimes even caused by people who are wearing uniform. You see what I'm saying? Or at least people who are wearing uniform are covering up. Those who are supposed to be carrying out investigations and all that are covering up. Recently, we have seen a video that spiraled around. A general actually came to a person who is a civil servant working in the land commission with a gunpoint, asking him to sign a document somewhere. You can imagine such kind of things. So these kind of things will eventually be taken care of by decentralization. And once we have such kind of a decentralized system where we are able to do things within the parameters of our states without any intervention from central authority, then that will be manifestation of the freedom that we have always been seeking and running after. It looks like we, the Equatorians, have always not yet found the freedom that we have been seeking and running after. So for that reason, I would ask fellow Equatorians, and especially the youth, to pay attention to these kind of discussions that the Equatoria Advocacy Foundation puts here and there. It will help them formulate what is called an ideology, you see, because if you are going to inherit problems and eventually try to propose solutions for those problems, at least you got to have knowledge of how you should eventually or implement what policies in order to be where you want, the type of freedom or the type of life that you would like to live. Thank you very much. God bless you until we meet again on another session, or until we engage again on another session. Stay safe from COVID-19. Thank you very much, and God bless you.